The wind howled through the skeletal ruins of Vareth 9, carrying the scent of death and decay. Once a thriving world, it had been reduced to an uninhabitable wasteland, the aftermath of a war no one remembered, but whose scars still bled into the soil. Among those ruins lay Gorath, the last of the Zarkuan. His once mighty form, a testament to his species' dominance, now lay broken and battered, streaked with old wounds and fresh blood. His breathing was ragged, his vision swimming in and out of darkness. He had accepted death. It was the only certainty left to him. His people had abandoned him. The Zelvani Empire, ruthless conquerors of 100 worlds, had crushed the Zarkuan with cold efficiency, wiping out their civilization in a war of annihilation. Gorath had fought, as all his kind did, with tooth and claw, with fury and strength. But against the endless machines of war, against the tactical precision of the Zelvani, raw power had not been enough. His brethren had fallen, one by one, and when the war was lost, those few who survived had fled, leaving behind the wounded, the dying, the forsaken. And now there was only him. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, the sun a distant, dying ember. He exhaled sharply, waiting for the cold embrace of oblivion. Yet fate, cruel as it was, had other plans. A distant rumble stirred him from the edge of unconsciousness. It was not the sound of the Zelvani war machines, he knew those all too well, but something else. Smaller, lighter, unfamiliar. His ears twitched, instinct battling exhaustion. He forced himself to remain still, his failing heart slowing as he listened. The figures emerged from the mist like ghosts, 6 of them, moving with discipline, their forms obscured by the heavy armor they wore. They were not Zelvani. Their scent was wrong, their movement too unpredictable, too fluid. Not the rigid, calculated steps of the Empire's soldiers. He had never seen their kind before, yet something in their posture, in the way they scanned the ruins, spoke of readiness. They were predators, but not of his kind. One of them, taller than the rest, raised a hand, and the others stopped. The leader's helmet retracted with a hiss, revealing a face unlike any Gorath had seen before, smooth, pale, with a pair of sharp, watchful eyes. A scar traced the man's cheek, a mark of a warrior, though his face lacked the savage features Gorath associated with battle-hardened soldiers. This was something else, a different kind of warrior. "Captain," one of the others spoke, voice distorted through a helmet. "We've got movement." Large life form, barely holding on. The leader, Captain Elias Carter, stepped forward, lowering his rifle but keeping it ready. His gaze locked onto Gorath, assessing, calculating. There was no fear in his expression, no malice either, just curiosity and something deeper, something Gorath couldn't name. "He's still alive," Carter said, almost to himself. "Looks like one of those Zarkuan things," another soldier muttered. "Didn't think any were left." "Neither did they," Carter replied, before kneeling next to the massive beast. Gorath bared his fangs, weak but defiant. His body screamed at him to stay still, to let the darkness take him, but instinct refused. He would not die cowering. If they meant to end him, he would at least face them. But they didn't attack. Instead, Carter pulled a small device from his belt, pressing it to Gorath's side. A burst of warmth spread through his veins, numbing the worst of his pain. The shock of it sent a growl rumbling from his chest, but his limbs remained too weak to strike. "Easy, big guy," Carter muttered, scanning the readings on his wrist. "You're not dying today." Gorath did not understand these creatures. No one helped the weak. The galaxy did not offer mercy. The Zelvani had left him to rot. His own kind had abandoned him, yet these aliens, these humans, treated him as something more than a corpse. One of the soldiers shifted uneasily. "Sir, I don't know if this is a good idea. We have no idea what it's capable of." Carter gave a short, humorless chuckle. "Pretty sure it's capable of tearing us apart if it wanted to. But it hasn't." He stood and turned to his team. "We patch it up, get it moving. See if it understands us." The soldier hesitated. "And if it doesn't?" Then we see what happens, Carter said simply. Gorath watched, trying to understand. These humans, they were different. Not like the Zelvani who conquered through cold precision. Not like the Zarkuan who lived by strength alone. There was something else. Something he couldn't grasp. The pain ebbed slightly as the humans worked, their strange devices sealing his wounds faster than he believed possible. He had lost too much blood, was too weak to move, but for the first time since the war ended, he felt something other than despair. He felt curiosity. Night fell swiftly on Vareth 9. The distant sky burning red as storms gathered beyond the ruins. The humans made camp, their lights casting strange, flickering shadows against the crumbling structures. Gorath lay nearby, his body healing but his mind restless. Carter approached, crouching beside him, eyes sharp and thoughtful. "You can understand us, can't you?" he asked, as if testing a theory. Gorath's throat rumbled. Not quite a growl, not quite an acknowledgement. Carter smirked. "Yeah, I thought so." He tossed something onto the ground. A piece of dried meat, the scent sharp and rich with nutrients. A test, perhaps. Gorath hesitated, then took it, chewing slowly. "I don't know what they told you about us," Carter said, watching him carefully. "But humans, we don't leave our own behind." Gorath swallowed. The words struck deeper than he expected. He had been left for dead by everyone, until the humans arrived. Beyond the ruins, something moved in the darkness. Watching, waiting. Gorath's ears twitched. The battle was not over. The night was not silent. The wind carried whispers of movement beyond the ruins, the low hum of something shifting in the darkness. Gorath's ears twitched, his muscles tensing despite the lingering weakness in his limbs. He knew the sounds of the wasteland. This was different. This was deliberate. The humans hadn't noticed yet. Their camp glowed softly in the night, a stark contrast to the ruins that swallowed all light. Captain Elias Carter stood near the perimeter, scanning the horizon with sharp, unreadable eyes. His people trusted him. Gorath had seen it in the way they followed his orders without hesitation, the way they moved as a single unit. It was a kind of strength the Zarkuan had never valued, loyalty that went beyond dominance, a bond not forged by fear or power, but by something else. Gorath pushed himself upright, his body protesting the movement. The humans had done something to him, stitched his wounds with strange technology, injected warmth into his blood that dulled the pain and forced strength back into his limbs. It wasn't enough to make him whole, but it was enough to fight. And a fight was coming. The scent hit him first, metallic, sharp, laced with the acrid stench of synthetic oils and alien blood. Zelvani. His throat rumbled low, deep, a warning sound that made the closest human soldier, Sergeant Dorn, snap his rifle into position. The others followed instantly, weapons raised, eyes narrowing as they searched the ruins for a threat they could not yet see. "What is it?" Dorn muttered. Gorath bared his fangs. Carter took a step forward, his voice calm but edged with tension. "You know what's out there, don't you?" A flicker of approval stirred in Gorath's chest. The human captain was perceptive. A warrior, but not a brute. He nodded once, the movement stiff. "Zelvani." His voice came out rough, guttural, the translation device the humans had given him struggling with his tone. Dorn swore under his breath. Another soldier, a woman with dark eyes and a steady hand, tightened her grip on her weapon. "We need to move." Carter didn't react immediately. He studied Gorath instead, as if weighing an unspoken question. Then he turned back to his team. "We hold position. If they wanted to bomb us from orbit, they would have. They're here for something else." "Us," Gorath growled. "Or me." "Probably both," Carter admitted. "But that means they want something more than a fight. We make them come to us." The humans shifted, exchanging glances. They weren't afraid, not in the way lesser beings would be. There was tension, certainly, but it wasn't panic. It was preparation. Gorath felt it in the air, the way they moved like a pack, how they positioned themselves instinctively to cover angles, protect their own. The Zelvani did not fight like this. They fought with precision, cold and calculating. He had faced them before, seen their warriors move in strict formations, each soldier a cog in a vast, merciless machine. They would not engage without a plan. They would not risk resources without purpose. The first shot came from the east, a sizzling bolt of plasma that struck the ground near the camp and sent molten shards of stone scattering into the air. The humans moved as one, ducking into cover, weapons snapping toward the direction of the attack. Gorath crouched low, his instincts flaring. Then the Zelvani stepped into view. Their armor was sleek, insectal, glinting under the pale light. Their eyes, hidden behind the dark lenses of their helmets, gave away nothing. They moved in synchronized precision, weapons raised but not firing. They weren't here to slaughter. Not yet. A single figure stepped ahead of the others, a commander by the look of his armor. He was taller than the rest, lean but powerful, his posture exuding the quiet arrogance of a predator who had never known fear. His voice, when it came, was cold. "Humans," he said, as if tasting the word. His gaze flicked to Gorath. "And the last of the beasts." Gorath bared his teeth but did not lunge. "Not yet." "You abandoned him," Carter said, his tone unreadable. "Left him to die." The Zelvani commander tilted his head slightly, a mocking gesture. "He was already dead." Carter smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Seems to be doing fine to me." There was a pause, a beat of stillness between two opposing forces, a line drawn in the dust of a dying world. Then the Zelvani commander's voice turned sharp. "You do not understand the war you walk into, human. You are a species too young to know its place." Carter's expression didn't change. "Funny thing about humans." Smoke curled into the sky, the scent of charred flesh mingling with the dust. Carter stepped over the bodies, reloading his weapon with practiced ease. His face was unreadable as he turned to Gorath. "They'll be back," he said simply. Gorath nodded. Yes, the humans had no reason to stay. No reason to fight a war that was not their own. They had come here for salvage, not for bloodshed. But they had not left him behind. The ship tore through the thick atmosphere of Vareth 9, its engines roaring as it pushed against gravity's pull. Inside the hold, Gorath remained crouched near the bulkhead, muscles tense as the unfamiliar sensation of acceleration pressed against his massive frame. The humans moved around him with the ease of experience, securing gear, checking weapons, their movements efficient and precise. It was a rhythm he had begun to understand. Not the cold efficiency of the Zelvani, but a calculated chaos, an adaptability that had allowed them to survive in a galaxy that should have crushed them long ago. Carter stood near the cockpit, watching the fading ruins on the display screen. His expression was unreadable, but there was tension in the way his fingers drummed against his rifle's grip. He was already thinking ahead, already preparing for the next move. "They're not done with us," Calloway muttered, strapping herself into a seat across from Gorath's atmosphere, the stars opening before them like a vast, endless sea. Gorath had always known space as a battleground. His people had fought and died among these stars, their war cries lost in the void. But for the first time in his life, he was not alone in it. Carter moved toward the center of the hold, his team watching him with the kind of quiet trust that spoke of years of survival. "The Zelvani don't know what we're capable of. They see humans as pests, something to be exterminated when necessary but not a real threat. We used that." Dorn snorted. "Great. Love being underestimated." Calloway leaned forward. "You want to hit their supply lines." Carter nodded. "We cut off their reinforcements, cripple their ability to operate in this sector. They think they're hunting us, but we turn it around. Make them bleed for every step they take." Gorath rumbled deep in his chest, considering. It was not the way his people fought. His kind had always struck head-on, relying on brute force, meeting their enemies with overwhelming strength. But that had failed them. The Zelvani had not been stronger. They had been smarter, more methodical, more willing to bleed their enemy dry before the real battle ever began. He met Carter's gaze. "You would make war in the shadows." Carter held his stare, unflinching. I would make war where they least expect it. For a long moment, Gorath was silent. Then he nodded. Then let us hunt. The humans moved quickly. They were not a fleet, not an army, but they did not need to be. Their ship, a rugged, well-worn vessel called the Black Swan, was built for speed and stealth, not brute force. It did not carry heavy weaponry or vast legions of soldiers, but it carried minds that understood war, hands that knew how to wield destruction. And now it carried him. They struck their first target within hours, a small Zelvani relay station orbiting a nameless moon, its defenses designed for policing, not warfare. The battle was swift, brutal. Gorath tore through the armored sentries, his claws slicing through steel and bone alike, while Carter and his team dismantled the station's communications, severing its connection to the larger fleet. When the last Zelvani fell, choking on his own blood, Carter planted a single explosive charge on the central relay. The station burned, its wreckage scattering into the void. The next attack came days later, an ambush on a Zelvani supply convoy, their ships moving in predictable patterns, unaware that they were now the prey. The Black Swan emerged from the darkness like a phantom, striking fast, vanishing before the enemy could mount a proper response. By the time the Zelvani realized what was happening, half their supply routes had been severed. Gorath learned. He learned the way humans fought, not with sheer strength, but with cunning, with patience. They struck where it hurt the most, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to strike back. And they did not fight alone. Every decision, every maneuver was made together, each soldier trusting the others to play their part. It was not the way of the Zarkuan, but it was the way of survival. And the Zelvani began to bleed. The enemy's response came swiftly. Patrols increased, their ships sweeping through the sector like a tightening fist. The humans knew they could not hold out forever. Their victories were victories of delay, of disruption. The Zelvani would adapt. They always did. And then came the message. It arrived through a stolen Zelvani transmission, intercepted by Calloway as she worked through the enemy's encrypted networks. The voice was cold, familiar, the same commander they had faced on Vareth 9. I know you can hear this, human, and I know you are listening, beast. Gorath's claws flexed against the floor. You have struck at us from the dark, like vermin scurrying through the shadows. But we are done playing your game. Carter's jaw tightened as the transmission continued. We have something that belongs to you. The screen flickered, and the image changed. A cage. A bloodied, battered form within. Zarkuan. Gorath's breath caught, his vision narrowing. His kind was supposed to be extinct. He had accepted that he was the last. But there, trapped within Zelvani hands, was proof that he was wrong. A growl built in his chest, low and dangerous. The Zelvani commander's voice returned, smooth, taunting. If you want your kin, you know where to find us. The transmission ended. Silence filled the cabin. Carter exhaled slowly. It's a trap. Gorath turned to him, eyes burning. I do not care. Dorn shook his head. Cap, this is insane. If we go in, they'll be ready for us. They'll have everything locked down. Calloway bit her lip. They wouldn't have sent this message if they weren't certain they could kill us. Carter looked at Gorath. The human captain did not speak immediately. He was weighing the risks, considering the odds. But he already knew the answer. You said humans don't leave their own behind, Gorath rumbled. Carter sighed. Then he smiled, sharp and determined. Then let's go get your people. The Black Swan turned, angling toward the heart of enemy territory, and the hunt began anew.